Hello, beautiful listeners and viewers. Welcome to another episode of the Heal Your Life Talk Show. My guest today is Deborah Cherry. Deborah and I met a couple of months ago. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. But in the meantime, welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I met Deborah through Heal Your Life training in Banff, where she came for the Heal Your Life workshop teacher and coach, life coach certification program. And but even before I met you in person, Deborah, there was that connection of this is a woman who gets things done and who really stands out in what it is that she does. And having gotten to know you better over the last few months, I know that that's not because your life is all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and all of those things, but because you have learned to shine even when the sun isn't shining.
hmm
And now you help other people to do the same through stress management, leadership, and working with people who have experienced loss. Is that correct?
That's right. And thank you. No, it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. In fact, actually been a lot of darkness, but I think that's kind of the beauty of everybody's own personal journeys, but it is going through the darkness. And they always say there's light at the end of the tunnel. And when you're in it, it certainly doesn't feel like that. But when you come out on the other side, you become a changed person because of it, whether it caused you to rise to a challenge, whether it was to connect with other people, or whether it was to learn and grow. And I think every challenge that I've probably faced in my life has really caused me to learn and grow and transform into probably a better version of myself. But when you're in the thick of it, that's not an easy thing to do.
Well, you used the word transform, and so often we think about that transformation and the shiny that's on the other side of transformation. But let's talk about it today. What's in the middle, right? So often there is at the beginning, if we talk about it in a context of A to Z or A to Z, where we're sitting around A, B, C, D, E, and we've got uh, this desire to do more with our lives, but really not a drive necessarily to make it happen. And, it'll be nice someday out there in someday land to do the things that we want to do. But for now, status quo. And then somewhere in the middle is where we either choose to shake up our life or something comes along and shakes up our life. And the absolute, like you said, aloneness of being in the tunnel and seeing a light and finding out after it runs over you that it was a train. And all of that process to then get to the XYZ of the transformation on the other side where the flowers are blooming and the sun is shining. And can you tell us how that has shown up in your life?
Oh my gosh. The middle ground. Oh my gosh. So I think when I first started getting into maybe the personal development and healing journey was when I first separated from my ex-husband. And, not a popular, my parents are kind of old school, so not a popular decision by any means. And it was really rebuilding everything because we had the couple's friends that were mostly his family. And so it wasn't just losing my marriage, seeing my kids go through such a transformative time when I'm just trying to get out of bed at that point. And I'm not and at that time I went to my doctor. I'm not necessarily a huge Western medicine. I think there's a time and place if you need it, for sure. um, but I just didn't sit well with me. So I did go on an antidepressant for, a short period of time, to get over that hump. And sometimes you need that help. And at that time I did. Um, And then from there, it was, trying to crawl out and rebuild a life and getting outside my comfort zone because I'm an introvert and I love being alone. But, in order to meet new people, you have to step outside the comfort zone. And I did that. I started, going to women's events or reaching out to people I knew in town and asking to go for coffee. And that was not a comfort zone for me, but definitely have some pretty strong friendships from that time. Um, and then, from there, it's been, long-term relationships maybe gone bad in between. And then most recently, a couple years ago, when I lost my partner to cancer and really, devoting time to care for him and really taking a step back from my own life. And that's a lonely place to be sometimes. I think as a coach, I thought I would be able to handle it. I maybe didn't reach out to my friends when I should have, or thought I could handle it. We have all the tools, but sometimes you still need that extra support. And I certainly, in retrospect now, know that I should have done that. I should have reached out.
It's such a narrative, right? The shoulds, in that the should of, I should be able to get through this. I train people in personal development.
Yeah.
I should be able to do this by myself. I coach people through this situation. I should be able to do this by myself. You, and just this expectation that we put on ourselves that we would never put on anyone else.
I always say that now. I always kind of look at situations like what would my best friend say to me? So me as my best friend, how could I, you know, give advice to a friend if they were asking me the same question? And I think that loses kind of that high expectation or standard that maybe I have of myself.
Mhm.
So I that's a tool that what would my friends say? What would my best friends say to me? And I think they would be, don't be so hard on yourself. Be kind and compassionate with yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Well, tell us when you were in the dark days, what brought you through to where you are now?
A lot of tears. A lot of tears.
We laugh, but it's true.
I know, and I'm not kidding. When it was almost a year before I was really wanting to get out of bed again after I lost Raph. That was a tough year. And then it was kind of, asking myself, like, do you want to continue living like this? And am I doing Raph, justice for his life in staying in bed? So part of it was a decision on my part, like the discomfort in being uncomfortable already, and not wanting to stay there anymore. And sometimes that's just time, but I do think I had some pretty complicated grief that I wasn't working through at the time. So I decided to, get a job just to get out of the house, just to have a reason to get out of the house. I had wonderful friends and family, that would reach out, but grief is sometimes something that you just have to work through on your sometimes on your own. I would say for it was great having people around me to support me, but eventually they get on with their lives, and you're still stuck in this brand new world. And for me, it was losing the identity of being a girlfriend, a caregiver, thinking that I knew where I wanted to go, what my dreams were, and I was kind of working towards it in a different coaching capacity than I am now. But I thought I had it all figured out, and then it just, like, my world imploded, and it was just like I had no idea how to get out of it, or what that next step looked like. Really, it was just this unknown space, and I clearly wasn't the same person that I was before, because your life is forever changed after, whether it's divorce or whether you lose somebody. But for me, it was I wasn't that same person, but I didn't know who I was yet, or didn't have that clear vision. So it's it's that in between stuckness, I call it, I guess.
Yeah.
That's so uncomfortable. Um,
Hearing you talk about this, and I'm wondering if there even is an answer to the question I'm going to ask, because I don't know if there is. But when someone is there in that space, that stuck space, knowing what you know now, is there something that people can say to that person or that they can say to themselves? Or is there something that can be done? Or is it just a fact that you need to go through that stuck space? I really don't know the answer.
yeah, that's a good question because, you know, a lot of people always say, "Oh, you're so strong," but you don't always want to be strong. Like I don't always want to be the strength. Sometimes I want somebody just to carry me for a day. Is there something that you could say? I think there's that universal, you're always where you're meant to be, even though it's so uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Um, and like certainly in grief, I think it's such an uncomfortable topic, but it's something that we're all going to be met with. And some people say some really silly things sometimes, and sometimes just sitting in silence with somebody, that's okay. Or, you know, whether they want to talk about the person that they lost or what they're going through. Um, but not saying, oh, for me, we weren't married. So saying to me, well, you weren't married, so like it didn't matter, right? Like, so you're discounting, the bond of love that I know that we had. So, you know, not making assumptions, even for somebody who's 90 years old, for somebody to say, oh, you lived a good life. Well, that's 9 decades of memories for somebody. And that doesn't discount the loss or grief that somebody might have. So sometimes saying nothing is kind of the best thing,
Yeah.
or just having an ear to listen, if they want to talk, or if they don't, just sitting with them sometimes.
Yes. When you were speaking just now, it made me think about something that I talk about in the workshops, which is that forgiveness piece
Mhm.
for around grief.
Yeah.
So when I first was considering forgiveness around grief, I thought, well, we're forgiving the other person for passing away, or drinking and driving and having an accident, or not taking care of themselves, or whatever it might be. But what I'm actually talking about is that completely different piece, which is people who you think are going to be there for you, but they're not,
Mhm.
and people who say things like, you know, well, you can get a new boyfriend, you can get married again, you can have more children or get another pet, whatever it might be, and really discounting your grief. And then you, as the grieving person, not only having to deal with the grief, but then having to somehow process the emotions and find your way to forgiveness for those who weren't able to be who you needed them to be in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And forgiving myself too, because I'm my own person, but I was like, I feel like I should be here by now. I feel like I
Mhm.
should be doing this by now, and I can't. So, forgiving yourself for just being where you are and not being somewhere different, that was a big thing for me because I always feel like, oh, I should be here by now, but I'm not. Or
Yeah.
am I healed enough or not? That sort of thing.
Hmm.
And you're always going to be
Hmm.
met with, it's in what we do, but you're always going to be met with some of those wounds that will still flare up every once in a while. Or,
Yeah.
it might just be watching a movie where there's a cancer patient, and it might spark something, and that's just, more evidence of you just need to continue your healing journey and doing the work for yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, no finish line.
I know, right? And just when you think you're over the finish line, you're going to be met with more contrast, and you're going to do it again so you can learn and you can grow. I
Yeah.
listening to a Heal Your Life podcast with Abraham Hicks, and she's one of my favorite people to listen to. And she just said, like, without contrast, there is no evolution. So if you're floating safely in your comfort zone, you're not growing, evolving, and transforming as a person. And so I feel like my life has been met with a lot of contrast, but I know it's just asking me to grow through it. And you can certainly, when you get to a certain point, or maybe a little bit on the other side of it, you can maybe deal with a similar situation maybe a little quicker than you did the last time, or you've grown from that experience, so you would deal with it maybe completely differently than you did the last
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
I think that's part of the growth and evolution of dealing with contrast or conflict or darkness.
The growth and evolution that has happened for you, you've shared with me in other conversations, is that you have decided to take this pain and turn it into purpose. Are you able to share with the viewers and listeners what it is that you are doing with your business, with your speaking, with coaching, with helping other people maneuver loss?
Yeah, I really do. I took a grief educator course, and it is, and it doesn't have to be grand life changes, maybe like I'm doing for myself, but whether it's just a way to, you know, hold a memory for someone, whether you do something like once a year, plant a flower, plant a tree, do something in memory. But for me, I really felt that my coaching from what it was to what it is now is really around helping people who are navigating loss to really begin that new chapter, because it's scary closing. There's the grief of closing a chapter, and for me, moving on to a new chapter was, am I going to forget all the previous chapters? But there's also beauty in taking that and knowing that I can help people through it, in creating a new chapter. And you can look at it as scary, which it is, or you can look at it as exciting, and like, you don't know the ending, but how beautiful is it to create a brand new version or a brand new vision for what your life can look like. And I think, in my case, I think Raph would be really proud.
Yes, I agree with that, Deborah.
Thank you.
I know that there's many people's lives who you've already touched, um, based on who you are as a person and combined with the experiences that you've been through, to be able to move through turning it into something that has this deep purpose for you. And I just really want to recognize and applaud the bravery that it takes uh, to to just not slam the book shut and say, okay, I'm healed enough. I don't ever want to think about that again. Let me focus on coaching people in their careers or in their finances or their goals, whatever it might be. But to be willing to stay uh, healed and raw,
Yeah.
so that you're revisiting the pain. But it sounds like you're at a place where you can revisit the pain and not be pulled back into the emotion, but be able to use the pain as a reference point in your coaching and workshops and speaking engagements
I
to
think,
relate to.
yeah. And I think, that's, we are all related and connected through our stories. And, that's any coach that I've ever had. Um, we connected with a story, and not just what I was there for. You
Yeah.
connect with that person, and knowing that somebody's gone through it, and is on the other side of it.
Mhm.
is inspiring. It's always been inspiring to me, and that's what I really hope that I bring, my clients, or if it's a workshop or whatever I'm doing. On top of it this year, and like talk about more new chapters, I'm an empty nester now. My son's gone to university, and there's so many different, quote unquote losses. And I never had a problem with my other two going away to school, but this one kind of punched me in the gut a little
Yeah.
bit. And I didn't even cry for the other two, but this one I cried for. And it just is, it's like, okay, I'm not, what does this new chapter, like, am I married to my location? Like, I don't have to be anymore. So, it can be exciting as well. And um, I'm very excited for all my kids and what they're doing. And it's never been like, oh, I miss them or I miss coddling them, but it's just another chapter,
Yeah.
without your kids, and what does that look like? And the world is my oyster, so I'm really trying to hone in on, you know, being guided to my next steps and what that looks like.
What I hear you saying is that, grief and loss are an ongoing topic in all of our lives as human beings. And that it's that learning to um, is adapt the right word? Learning to examine the grief and the choice that comes with the loss, um, rather than be paralyzed by it or held back by it. And I wanted to make a clarification here. When I say that, there's no discounting of people's grief. I'm not discounting anyone's grief. However, the other side of that coin is the people who choose to live in grief 30, 40, 50 years later. And the overall impact that it has not only on their life, but on their extended family's life again for decades. And so was there ever a conscious decision of I'm using this to move forward? Was there I wish I had the right words here, but this conscious decision to say this really bad thing happened and I feel horrible and I'm experiencing extreme loss, but I know in time I will not stay in this quote unquote stuck place, that there's life on the other side of grief. Was that an awareness you had even then?
I think even whether it was my divorce or and that kind of crippled me for a lot of years, just going
Mhm.
through that whole, you know, legal process and, navigating
Mhm.
young kids at that time. And there was a time when I was like, I don't want to be here in this space anymore. I don't want to play. And this is going to sound like the wrong word, but I feel like I really have played the victim card in my divorce, where this is all happening to me, or even with, Raf's loss and all that came after it. This is happening to me. And I think, as I've learned and grown and worked with coaches and done my healing, I think it is a conscious decision. Like, do you
Mhm.
want to sit here in this anymore? And I think that was for me too. Like, am I
Right.
not going to get out of it? Like, at one point you have to get out of bed. You can't stay in bed forever. Although I do love my bed, but you can't stay
Well,
in bed. You can't stay in bed. But I think with anything, like, you don't like your job, you don't like this, you don't like that. It's a choice. Like, you're not stuck in life. You don't have to be stuck in life. If you want to change, you have the ability to change it. But along with that comes healing and decisions and action towards what you really want and believing that it can happen.
yes, yes, that piece, the belief.
Belief part.
Yes,
And it's easy, right? Like, it's easy to go back because we all like comfort over here. But eventually, when you've kind of done some healing work, you understand that comfort is you can't find comfort in the comfort anymore. Like it's uncomfortable just being comfortable sometimes. I don't know if that even made sense. I feel like it
It
did.
does, because you mentioned earlier Esther Hicks and Abraham Hicks and that work. And when you were sharing that feeling of uncomfortableness, what went through my mind was that it's a different vibration. So
Yeah,
what was comfortable in one phase, as you heal and raise the vibration or change the vibration, it becomes uncomfortable. Uh,
absolutely.
and whether you are moving up or down that emotional guidance scale, that's the contrast that you mentioned right there.
Yeah. And once you've kind of learned something, you can't unlearn it. So you can't necessarily go backwards. So you got to go forwards.
Yes, yes. And life is so good when we're living with purpose and helping others. And I know that that is what you are dedicated to doing every day. Deborah, I have put your website in the show notes, but I'll mention it now, deborahcherry.com. So it's Deborah with A-H, Deborah, and Cherry with two R's and two E's. What I mean by that is CHERREY.com. But not to worry, I've got that in the show notes. So viewers and listeners, do check that out on what Deborah's doing. And I've spent some time looking at Deborah's website, and her reach is phenomenal. She also works with um, very stressful situations and managing stress in our lives for healing. So there's just like the whole picture is over there at deborahcherry.com. And thank you so much for being on the show with us today and for sharing your very personal story as well, and how it has brought you on this path with purpose.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.